Yeah, a little closer is good. And can you tilt up a little bit so I see the top of your head? Brianna, can you tilt it up a bit so I see the,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
there
got
we
that.
go. And a little, yeah, there we go. Excellent.
You want to see where all that brain matter is,
Yeah,
right?
see all your gray matter, your brain matter. Well, why don't we
The
start off?
brain. It's the only thing that does matter. You know.
That's true. Well, let's start off by having you tell me your name and when were you born?
I'll have to check that out. Let me see. Stanley Eugene Scheidler, born 1923, July 6th. Go ahead.
Okay, well
That,
that makes you 100 years old.
that makes me 100 plus a month.
Wow.
Almost, yeah, a month. I'm 100 and I'm on the new 100-year cycle.
Okay, that's a good cycle to be on. Not many people are on that cycle. Uh, Stan, tell me, what lessons have you learned in your life?
Try to be intelligent, which was very difficult for me, and honest. Not always. You can't always be honest. I couldn't anyway. That's one of my weaknesses. I tend to exaggerate things, and other than that, I'd say I'm a fairly normal person.
Well,
If there is such a thing as normality, you know,
well, in terms of lessons
it comes to
well, in terms of lessons you've learned,
lessons.
yeah, what lessons have you learned and what advice can you give to people growing up?
Well, all I know is the one lesson I did learn was don't get in my mother's way when she's angry. Uh,
And
the other lesson
what
is
would
which
happen what would happen when you got in her way?
I don't think you want to know, but if I will actually tell you. Sometimes she would pick me up by my hair and slap me in the face. That's corporal punishment. Today she would have been arrested. But this is what pretty common among parents in those days. Short tempers and short amount of financing to take you through a day or a week. It was tough times. And I contribute a lot of her short temperness toward the fact that she was so frustrated about how life was happening. 3 kids, and it was tough. It was very tough. As far as advice, I would say the best advice I could give anyone is keep your mouth shut and be thoughtful rather than open it and leave no doubt. You know about that one.
No, tell me about that.
Well, that's what it is. You want me to repeat it?
Well, so keep your mouth shut, meaning if you say what's on your
Yeah.
mind, it may get you
Keep
into
quiet
trouble.
and be thoughtful instead of opening it and leave no doubt that
Nice.
you are a fool. And I see a lot of that today, and it's frustrating. As far as lessons, you have to go through them yourself. Uh, try to make every day count and be productive. If whatever you do, that you do well, or even if you don't do it well, do it. Stay active, and always be inquisitive. If you're inquisitive, you can still learn. I'm still learning, and the best, as I sit here talking to you, it's uh, it's a learning experience.
Excellent. Well,
Go
Stan,
ahead.
tell me about your life. Where were you born, and tell me some of the high points of your life or low
Well,
points.
yeah. Well, I had to. Yeah, I was born on Ditmars Avenue in 1923, and as I said it once before, like the daily paper, it was a home delivery. Uh, from there, we moved to Ninth Avenue. This is a story of Long Island City, so We were right in the city, and we moved to Ninth Avenue. My parents had bought a rooming house when things were good, and then things got sour. But I can remember several people that lived there. I was only 4 or 5 at the time. There was a Mr. Donnelly who was a trolley engineer, meaning he drove the trolley. And the people in the back had a little apartment. They were the Hansons, and they had 2 children. So that's my early memory. After that, because of my father's health, we moved out to Deer Park, Long Island, which was about 50 miles away. It was then very rural, and I went to the St. Joseph's parochial school. We were in Deer Park from 1930, and we moved like 3 or 4 different times. Finally moved to East Northport, Long Island, which is on the South Shore, because my father was working at the Veterans Hospital, the Northport Veterans Hospital, which was a mental institution for World War One veterans. Beautiful place, and that I lived there until well, till I got married, I guess I'd say. But we I was delivering papers. I was probably 13 or 14, and they had a contest going. You got so many customers, and you get a trip to Canada on the Hudson Day line for a 7-day trip to Canada at 13, which we had enough customers so I could go. And we got on the ship, and we were going to the Niagara Falls.
Hmm.
On the way, we were sitting there at dinner time. There was like 5 of us kids, 4 or 5 of us at one table with a woman, and the band was playing, and I guess I was singing along there. She said, "Well, why don't you get up and sing a song?" And I did. And the song was "It's a Sin to Tell a Lie." And it went over real big. I think one person clapped.
Can you sing a few bars of that again?
Sure. Be sure it's true when you say you love me. It's a sin to tell a lie. Millions of hearts have been broken just because these words were spoken. I love you. Yes, I do. I love you. So be sure it's true When you say I love you, 'cause it's a sin to tell a lie. Where's
Yeah.
the applaud?
Well, and you really feel that it is a sin to tell a lie or not? I think you maybe don't feel that way.
Well, of course it is. Well, it depends on, the little white lies are only, they're not corporal sins. They're just simple, you can say them in the confession box to a priest and be forgiven. Okay?
Gotcha.
And yeah. So and it wasn't easy to go to confession because you didn't want to really tell them what you did, but you needed to tell them something. So you'd make up a story. Anyway,
So
so
you'd make up something
I
not as,
graduated from,
yeah, go ahead.
pardon me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I went from St. Joseph's in Babylon to St. Philip's in Northport when we moved to East Northport. And I had trouble learning. uh, so it took me, my sister was 2 years younger than me, but she finally caught up to me. And so in 1938, I went to Northport High School. I was then 16, I guess. So the Northport had a athletic, and they were just starting a new athletic activity, which would be football. They were going to do football. No, I was 15 at the time, as a matter of fact. And so I put in for to go to the football team, and of course I didn't get into any games, but I stayed with the football team right through high school, right to the end of high school, and in 1941, Smithtown was another town in Suffolk County, and they the the theater in Northport and the theater in Smithtown were owned by the same company, and they were going to give a cup to Northport was playing Smithtown that year, the first year. They both had the first year team, and they were giving a cup to the winner. As it turned out, it was a tie, 7-7. So they wound up cutting this cup in half and putting it on a plaque. So Northport got half a cup, and it depends on whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, whether half a cup is full or empty.
That's good.
So the interesting thing about that was they always had it in the showcase as you went to school. I went to that high school and eventually, I graduated, luckily, because they needed to get rid of me. I was a pain in the ass. And so I graduated in 42. 50 years later, we had a reunion and of the 1942 class. And the dinner was being held at the school. And I looked in the showcase, the cup wasn't there. So somebody runneth off with the cup.
It didn't runneth over, it ran off.
Yeah. My cup didn't runneth over, the cup runneth over. Yeah. So well, anyway, that was that. But in
And so
nineteen
that was in the 40s. So was World War II on, and did you participate in World War II?
oh, yeah, but prior to that, in 1941, I had bought from a friend who had bought this. Uh, it was a state trooper car that they had that was getting too old, so they put it out for public use. And my friend bought it, and he used it for a year. He was older than me, and in 1941, I he wanted to sell it. I bought it from him for $50, and I decided I wanted to go up to Canada. So a friend and I, Bob Cannon, we went to Canada. It was in September. No, it was in August. And I had $50 and Bob had 35. We left New York. We got to St. George, which was inland lake up in New York. Had a cabin there, and then from there we went to Montreal. So we got to Montreal in 2 days. From that point on, we went down to Pennsylvania to Scranton, where he had relatives. The story was after 7 days and a broken down car, I still had change from my $50. I think he probably had some money left too. That's just to tell you how cheap things were in those days. Gas was like 10 gallons for $1.
How much would
So,
how much would a hamburger or a cup of coffee cost back in the 40s?
well, if you paid more than a quarter, I, I know one thing. A bowl of soup was 20 cents, and you got some saltines with it, or a roll. Uh, Incredibly different from today's economy, and wages were so much different. I worked on the farm when I was around 15. Worked the farm during the summer, and well, you got 15 cents an hour, so you made like $1.25 a day, which was in those days a lot of money. I in those days they didn't have potato diggers that would put them right on the truck. They had to be hand picked and put in burlap sacks. You got I think you got 50 cents a hundred, something like that for 100 pounds of potatoes. Uh, what else?
Well, so eventually you got into the military.
Okay, so in 1942, I had worked for this butcher, Otto Fretz, as an apprentice, and I decided I had to go into the service because I'd be drafted if I didn't. I wanted to go into the Navy. So September the 9th, 1942, I went in to New York. I can't remember the street that the recruiting was on, but I joined. And at the time, my father was patriotic. He had been in the World War One. He didn't get into World War One, but he was in the army and late in World War One. And when it was he never served overseas. He was rejected because he didn't have a good heart. And I did training in Brooklyn. Think of it all that. After that, I was in Brooklyn for a year or so, and was then shipped out. I went by tanker to Trinidad. I was headed for Recife, Brazil, to the destroyer escort fleet, which was stationed in Recife, Brazil, to be the head cook on the ship. The ship had like 280 crew, which you fed 3 meals a day. But I flew from Recife, Brazil. I mean, from Trinidad to Recife, and then went on board ship. And we did submarine searching in the South Atlantic. You know, there was no war going on in the South Atlantic, but there were lots of German subs. We never encountered one. And after the war with Germany, we went through the Suez Canal to Pearl Harbor. And by the time we got to Pearl Harbor, it had been bombed by Truman, and they surrendered. So I was taken off the ship and went by a converted aircraft carrier called the can't think of the name of the aircraft carrier right now, and it was converted to a troop transport. So we went from Pearl Harbor to San Francisco. I stayed in San Francisco for a few days, and we then went by train to New York. And of course, that took 7 days because you were sidelined every time a passenger train would be coming through. That we were in no hurry. The carrier was called the White Plains, and we got to New York. I was then sent out to Long Island to the Lido Beach Hotel, which was then taken over by the Navy for discharging Navy people. That was on the South Shore, and I lived on the North Shore. So I hitchhiked with my sea bag to get home. And the only thing on the road was these elderly women. Everyone else was either working or in the service. And they'd pick me up and take me maybe 10 or 15 miles toward my destination. And then I'd get a ride by someone else. I finally got home. And it was nice that I can remember taking off. Go ahead.
Well, so tell me, you had some history owning a restaurant and cooking. Tell me
Yeah.
tell me about the restaurant and tell me what type of things did you cook?
Well, my brother-in-law had a bar. He was taken. He came out of the service early because of disability. So he opened up a bar in a place called Glen Head, which was in Nassau County. And when I got out of the service and I went over there and stayed with them and would help with the bar and do some cooking. He had been to Florida when he was in the service, and there was a place that was called Chicken in the Basket. And they served like half a chicken, or I don't know exactly, maybe half a fried chicken with French fries, and in a basket. And he thought that was a good idea. So when we finally located a place in Northport, it was a harbor, and they always had some trade there. So we decided to use chicken in the basket as the main course, and then I did other, there were other soft shell crabs, scallops, oysters, roast beef. Had a fairly nice menu. I had myself and a dishwasher in the kitchen. Prior to that, before I got there, there was I actually went to a hotel in New York that the dining room had been closed, and they decided to open it. This elderly man and woman owned the hotel, so he opened up the kitchen and hired me to do the cooking. And I was there maybe 6 months. I can't remember. They didn't do enough business, and they were selling. They actually sold the hotel, so I was out of there. I did a little odd jobs at the time, and that's
Well, I know that you
where
also
we're at on that.
I know that you also had a career in construction. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, what happened in the restaurant with the chicken in the basket? We doing okay at first, and it got I met I met this girl, and we decided to get married. So I did get married, and I couldn't live on the money I was getting at the restaurant. So I got a job in construction, and that job I was getting $1.50 an hour. I would wind up with about $90 a week if I worked 6 days. We bought a house after being married. By then, I also had a daughter, Janet, and and well, that was the reason I had to leave the restaurant, because I couldn't support them and with what I was getting. So we bought this house for $7,000. It was a 2-story farmhouse, and we were able to borrow $1,500 from her mother for as down payment. So we wound up with a $6,000 mortgage, and the mortgage would cost us like $45 a month. Food. You could go to the grocery store. I go to the store on a Friday or night or Saturday whenever I got my money, and I could spend $20, and and that would carry us through the whole week. So that's had a car, buying gas. Gas was very reasonable, less than $1 a gallon, probably around 55 cents a gallon in the 50s. I married in 1949. Jen was married in 1950, and the second child was Carrie, was born 1952. And that's I stayed with this builder. He was a Navy officer during World War II and stayed in the Naval Reserve. So when the Korean War came on, he had to go back into the service. And he shut down the operation, of course, so I had to go out on my own. And that's when I went into being a contractor. I worked my way up to where I had built 3 temples, 1 Lutheran church, a a a rest home with had 50 beds, and I did I was working with a person who did drive-in dry cleaners owned, and I would build a drive-in dry cleaners. So I probably built around 7 of those, plus building homes, and
Uh,
I lived on Collie Avenue. And,
do you know whether construction techniques have changed much over the years? I know other things have
oh,
changed, but tell me what changes
oh,
you know
absolutely. Yeah.
of.
Well, the biggest one, all I know is they don't use many hammers anymore. They use all air guns and things. It's a lot more mechanized than it was then. When I first went to work as an apprentice, I had a saw, I had a tape, a 6-foot ruler which opened up. It was a Lufkin, and I had 2 different saws. One was a finish saw, and one was a rough saw. Hand saws. No electrical saws at the time. Skill saw came out with. That's why everyone calls every saw they ever owned, what electrical saw they own. It's always a skill saw. It's a different Mac, but that's the name of the first saw that was made, and so you'd have a hatchet, trim work. I'm kidding, no. Oh, you needed a hatchet, you need, and your hammer, and your saw, and a nail apron, and we would. Well,
Okay.
that's
Well, so
Go
things
ahead.
have changed some over the years, I understand. Now tell me about your
Oh, and
as I was saying, tell me who was your second wife and what other kids did you have?
yeah, okay. Second was Molly, Molly and Parsons. I had my first child with her, with Michelle. Then Scott, several years later, and Linda, who is Brianna's mother, and that's where I have my apartment. And actually, I divorced Marlene. I can't remember what year it was, but she eventually died, and I don't know what else I can tell you about that.
Well, tell me about this. You didn't mention your sister's name. What were the names of your siblings
I'm
and
sorry.
your parents?
You want to see some pictures?
Where's the one?
Which one?
4th of July picture.
See that picture?
Hold it up a little higher. Oh yeah.
Here. It's the one he's trying.
That's
talk
that
about.
that picture was taken on July 1932, and my mother was a wonderful maker, and she was costumes for his holiday. So I'm there with a three-corner hat, like a cologne, and a bill, and they dressed in their costumes. Nobody was happy about it, as you can see by it on our face.
Well, very good. Thanks for showing me the
Recognize it?
picture.
I mean,
It seems that the audio
can
got a little bit
you
worse
see clear?
when you held up the picture. The sound, oh yeah, that's nice and sharp. But for some reason, the audio's going out when you're holding up the picture. So maybe
Yeah,
you could put the picture down
yeah,
now and continue.
yeah. Not sure what's going on there. It went for a second. Is that going any better now?
Yeah, I think that's better now. Thank you. Anything else about your
Too
family members?
close.
The audio's getting us too.
Okay, it's uneven, huh?
Um,
Well,
yeah, a little bit.
yeah, it was pretty good up to now, and
That's
now
it.
it's a little bit broken, but let's try a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me again the names of all your people in your immediate family.
My first name was Julia Scheideler. My mother's name was Lillian Umstadter, and her mother's maiden name was Dietrich. Her last name was Dietrich. Both immigrants, Germany. Like 1928, I believe. Uh, I'm not sure of what caused the death. My grandmother lived to be in her. She died. She came and lived with us in the 40s, and when I went to the service in 1944, I got a letter from my parents that my grandmother had passed away. She was in her 80s at that time, and my father's family. Well, I'm not sure of how many generations, but they have. It was several generations from Germany. Uh, my father's brother was 18 years older than him, so he was the youngest, very young, you know, a late child, a very late child, and they had a carriage shop in New York City where they repaired carriages and, of course, automobiles later on. Uh, I'm not sure of how what happened to the business. My understanding was they had borrowed money to keep it operating, and then they couldn't make the payments. So they lost the business, and that's when my father was kind of cut loose, and same as his brother. His
Well,
older brother was
when you say you said they had a carriage shop, was that a carriage that would be pulled by a horse?
yes, yeah, horse carriages and then automobiles. So, I know very little about it other than that.
But then and then later he was a mechanic, right?
And as well, he did the mechanic. I guess he learned mechanic. They also worked on engines in that, so he had an early training. You know, I'm not sure how much experience he had, but he did know how to repair engines and do. And it would be nothing like today with computers and all. And then when we did to East Northport, he had gotten a job when we were still in Deer Park at the Veterans Hospital in Northport. And that's the reason we moved Deer Park to East Northport, because it was within a mile of where he had to work. So he could actually walk to work. And we stayed, which is part of that area of East Northport. We were there until he had passed away in 47. And we moved from there to Huntington.
Now,
And Huntington
I don't know
was my
that
second.
Stan, I don't know that you've mentioned yet your sister Lillian, who I knew was a wonderful woman, and she had 8 kids. One of them I've married, Tara. What was Lillian like growing up?
Yeah. Well, I had, when we started the other day, I had mentioned that, and I kind of forgot it. No, I didn't forget it. I just yeah, Lil was 2 years younger than me, and so I would have wind up having to take her different places when I was like 7 or 8, and she'd be 6. So it was never as real young. You don't want to bring your sister along, you know. But as we got older, we got along very well. She married Bronson O'Reilly, and interesting about that is Bronson came from Shelter Island, out near Montauk, and my first wife and I, we weren't married then at the time. Still weren't married. We went out to Shelter Island, drove out in my car, Shelter Island, and then on our way back that night, got into an accident, and someone ran a red light. So my car went forward, and I had no control over it. And Bronson and Lil were in the back of the car. Kay was on the right side of me in the passenger side, and her door flew open, and I had to grab her to keep her from falling out of the car. And in the back was Bronson and Lil, and we didn't know until later that in order to protect her, he pushed the head down onto his knee and broke her nose.
Wow.
We were getting married in 2 weeks, and black eyes, nose, and but they were bent on getting married. So, but as your wife said, they fixed her up so she looked beautiful, and she was beautiful. She was, she had a wonderful personality, and she was really very tolerant of me for as nasty as I could have been to her at times. In fact, she said she'll never forget me for that reason.
What wasn't there the time when
Yeah,
she was
Lil.
Stan, was there a story about when she was still very young and in a baby carriage that you set her baby carriage
Oh,
on fire?
well, I happen to have propensity. I was a pyromaniac Fires attracted me. When we lived in that rooming house on Ninth Avenue, uh, I'd be in one room in the house, and my mother'd be in another one, and it would be quiet, and she'd say, "Stanley, what are you doing?" Because if it was too quiet, it was not a good idea. I would also take matches that had been lit, and they'd be in the tray, little balls on them, and that was sulfur. That's what was left on a match after it had been lit, and I would eat the sulfur over the match. So that's about what called me a maniac. Uh, Lil was in the carriage. She must have been a year, maybe a year and a half old, and I was probably 5 or 6, 7. We're on the street, and she's in the carriage, and it's windy, and there was some paper from a newspaper. I really don't know how I got matches, but I had matches. I lit the matches and lit the paper. The paper blew on the carriage. My father was delivering laundry, I believe. He just happened to be going across that street, and he saw it happen. He saw the fire. So I don't know how dangerously close it was, but at any rate, you can understand that I really got a lesson after that. It didn't deter me from being a pyromaniac, though.
That's
But
funny.
yes, I don't know how close it came to be real serious. It could have been if he hadn't come along, I guess.
One of those lucky moments. Maybe there
Other
wouldn't have
than
been 8 O'Reilly kids. Well, I'm sure there would have been, but tell me, tell me this: what inventions came about during your lifetime? Can you think of what wasn't before you and then came about?
well, it wasn't the Stanley steamer. I'll tell you that. What the Stanley steamer was, right?
Yeah.
You know what the Stanley
No,
steamer
no,
was?
I don't know what that was. What was that?
It was an automobile.
Oh, okay.
It was an automobile. That's what did they? The telephone was already invented. The light bulb was invented. Uh, there's so many things that. Oh, I can tell you, Graf Zeppelin. The Graf Zeppelin was a German airship, and in 19, I think it probably was 1930 or 30. I'm not, maybe a little later. It was making its virgin trip from Germany to New York. I think it was to New Jersey, to an airport, and it got there, and they were land, and it didn't have it didn't have helium that does not ignite. Ignitable gas. Evidently, a spark caused a fire, and the Zeppelin caught on fire. And there was when the Zeppelin would land, there would be people holding lines to keep it from, to direct it. And when the Zeppelin caught fire, there were people, had not gotten out, and they so the Zeppelin takes off, but hadn't been anchored yet, and these people that were holding the lines went up, and instead of letting the line go, they stayed until they were so high they'd fall and die. So it was a real tragedy, and that was the last. After that, they used helium in the Zeppelins, and the airplane took over. Of course, the atom bomb was invented. You know all about that, and television. When we had the restaurant in Northport in 1946 or 47, we bought a Dumont television, which came out New Jersey, and that's where they would broadcast from, Dumont, New Jersey. And the Dumont television, it was probably a screen about not a hell of a lot bigger than the one you're looking at with me now. And every time a car would go by, it would have an effect on the screen. It was great. It was really incredible. So that invention, and the only thing they would have on the TV at that time would be fights or wrestling,
I'm sorry.
or
Say that again.
maybe
Say that again. What did they have on TV then?
at that time it mostly would be a heavyweight fight, or even they would have fights on there, and they would have wrestling, and then other there would be other events, and eventually there would be these shows with Jack Benny and all the Milton Berle was what they called him, Mr. TV, because he had the first show, a 1 hour show. He was corny as hell, and it was burlesque. Just
So
burlesque put on TV.
you're breaking up a little bit, but so you mentioned it was Milton Berle had this show, huh?
Milton Berle. You don't recognize
do.
that
No, I
name?
know of him. Yes. And
Yeah.
what
Okay.
other inventions come to mind?
Well, you well, I can't tell you because
Okay, well that's
I'm
fine.
sure
How about this question? Can you any
yeah.
thoughts on what your happiest memory was in your life and what your saddest memory was in your life?
Well, of course, losing people, losing my sisters, losing my parents. My father died very young. He was in the late 40s, and actually he had committed suicide uh, because he had a terrible disease. At the time, they didn't know what it was I believe it's cancer, and they didn't know how to treat that at the time. And it's a very painful business. And so you don't have to excuse someone's desire to die. That's their choice, and there's reasons always for it. Sometimes the reasons are not good ones, but if you're suffering, there is absolutely no reason to stay living. If that's the outcome, and, I just anyone that would demean a person for taking their own life doesn't have any empathy for humanity. You know, that's my opinion. And I might as well tell you because it's a fact. I am an atheist. I was a Catholic, and I'm not neither proud nor it's my choice, and I put a lot of thought into it. It's not like it's something that just came up. I've been that way for 50 years, and that's what that is. What else would
Okay,
we?
well, let's see. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to talk about or remember?
There's a lot of things I would like not to remember, but you no. Well, I was very, they had given me a birthday party 10 years ago. These friends gave me a birthday. I was 90, and actually it was in the house that I had built, in the house, but on the property of the house, and a lot of people there, a lot of friends, but I didn't know, and and they would say to me, well, what's the secret for longevity? Well, soup is one of them. And yeah, and I hadn't come up with one, but this time, 10 years later, it's a house that I originally bought when I moved to Virginia, and it's owned by the people who gave me the party, and anyway, they would ask. I had all good friends, no strangers. They were all people I knew, and people enjoyed coming and singing with me for celebration. And they would ask me, your what do you attribute longevity to? I said, well, genes are very important. Having, good genes. The other one is luck. You have to be lucky. And believe me, knowing the cause I've had and the stupidity of some of the things I did, I was very lucky. And of course, the third and is
I didn't hear that, Stan. Can you tell me again?
procrastination.
Stan, tell me again, what was the third
Procrastination.
thing?
Soup.
No,
The
the third.
thing. Procrastination.
Oh, okay.
You keep putting it off. And of course, humor is not a bad idea either, because it allows your anatomy to relax, and you get a lot of pleasure out of trying to make people laugh.
That's good. Now, I guess it's
Yeah.
also that you've always kept busy. And did you have a garden up until a few years ago? And how big and what did you grow?
See that?
Oh, here. A little more, Grandpa. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
You
Hold
see
it up closer to
that?
the lens.
Yeah, so right about here.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little
Should
higher.
be, yeah, a little bit higher.
Yeah,
There
okay,
you go.
that's good. Oh, wow. And what's in that garden?
My garden always consisted of tomatoes, Swiss chard, uh, green beans, blue like green beans, uh, uh, kohlrabies. I did. Um, I think of the name of it. I had onions, potatoes. I grew corn once because Linda's father-in-law had some corn seed that he hadn't used. I said, okay, you know, other than that, I wouldn't. Corn it's delicious to eat, but it's quick and it doesn't last long. Fennel, not fennel. Broccoli, cauliflower. These are all plants I would buy and store plants. I didn't grow them from seed. Green onions.
Well, it's nice to know that one can still garden into their 90s and approaching 100. You're a good example to others.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a very healthful enterprise, and mentally to watch things develop and grow into something that's useful. It's incredible. And every day you would go out there and then and see these things developing. And of course, these goddamn moths would come along and lay eggs, and then you had to fight them, to make sure that your product was not going to be before you ever got to eat it.
Do you have any other photos there that you wanted to show?
Oh,
This one?
what is that one?
That's the one of you. That's your neighbor.
Oh yeah, this is me in the Navy, 1940.
There we go.
Wow, good looking man.
Cool.
Here, give me 1 second.
Good, that's good.
I
Any
had
others?
I was told I was I was voted the most handsome class.
There.
I'm sorry,
Just one.
you said you were voted what?
Ooh, grandpa. He was voted most handsome his senior year. Here,
Nice.
I'll hold it, grandpa.
Okay.
That's a little
Yeah.
bit of glare.
Yeah, if you turn it a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. And how old are you in this picture? Are you about 30?
18.
18?
No,
Okay.
that's senior year photo.
Okay, his
Yeah, maybe
yearbook photo, nice. Okay, I
now
see, yeah,
there's a little bit.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if they hadn't been so kind, I probably would have stayed there till I was.
Okay. Well, I guess having a sense of humor also helps for longevity. Is that right?
Well, but covered up a lot of my. You did, well, that's really not you. But people think it's you. It's a good thing. Unless it's an honorable persona, of course. Uh,
Well,
otherwise,
I'm afraid you're breaking up again, but is there any last things you'd like to say or any messages to future generations?
My last will and testament. You want my will and testament? Is that it?
If you like.
You know what? Is not, was it Mel? Whoever developed bugs anyway. He say at the end of the movie, that's all, folks. So that's
Okay.
what he on his tombstone. That's what he on his tombstone, folks.
That's all, folks. That's a good way to end it. Well, thanks so much for this great interview, Stan. And maybe we'll do it again next year.
Could you make it 6 months?
Okay, yeah. Well, congratulations on being 100 years old and keep up the good work.
Thank you for your generosity and Tara. Is a great person. She really is. We didn't get little kids, but you know them all, and you know how well she did. But you got one of the best of them. They're all good.
Great.
Okay.
Well, nice talking with you and have a good day out there in Virginia.
Nice. All right. Thank you. I'll say goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.